welcome back, guys. Episode 2 of season 2.
You.
And we have equipment. We are official podcasters.
Yeah, we have like official like mics and ear like headsets and our little
We got our little
board.
soundboard, the MIDI effects, but we don't have them programmed yet. So bear with us. We'll get there. We'll have some like clapping and some laughter for you guys eventually.
I feel like we should definitely have one that's like crickets for when one of us says something that we're like, what the fuck?
Oh,
And then we're just
100.
like you just say something off and I'm like, it's like,
Or you say one of your weird little things, you start singing your kumbaya, and I just look at you.
I feel like it's a casual way to like, redirect the other. Just
Definitely.
Be like, what the fuck did you just
Or if you start going off on a tangent and I'm just gonna click the crickets and you're gonna be like,
we really should have like a pullback. It was like a whip. Like, oh shit, we're in the wrong space.
Okay, I think that'll be good. All right, guys. So today's episode, we're gonna discuss duality and balance.
And like all kind of aspects. I feel like we've talked about it's kind of hard to talk about life and not talk about duality and balance, to be honest. Because life is duality in itself between life and death. So life itself is a duality paradox, the right word there.
Yeah.
So it's like you're already in that, but I feel like we've talked about duality in itself a lot, like accepting you're good and bad, but we haven't talked about the duality of life, going throughout life with duality and not just trying to be good and happy all the time.
Right.
And not always doing certain things, like allowing yourself to have this full range of
like a
being.
pendulum.
Yeah.
Understanding that sometimes you're over here and it's swinging in the dark, bad, negative shit, and your life is in shambles, and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. But then it just starts slowly getting better. Then all of a sudden you find yourself in the light and you're like, wow, I feel like I'm the happiest I've ever been right now.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people, some people don't like to view it this way, but like I don't know how to view it other than this, because it just seems so pattern recognition at this point, that any moment that I'm in like the lowest shit, I'll cry, I'll have my moment. But when I start coming out of it, the first thing that happens is I'm just like, girl, it's gonna get good after this. It's so shitty right now. This must be some goods brewing. So it's like I'm sitting in my shit, but I'm like, good is brewing, bro. I'm ready. I'm like, bring it on back, because I know what's good is gonna be even better. Like, yeah, it kind of helps you embrace it.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times recently where I like find myself crying, and I'm in front of a mirror and I look and I'm like, I am so grateful for this pain, because I know the duality of joy and bliss that it's going 100%. To bring. And I'm like partially trying to convince my upset self of that, but also like my higher self is like really truly realizes and knows that like it is going to get better.
Yeah, it's like it just feels,
it's an eternal dance, bro.
Yeah, it's like nothing is, what's the opposite of change? Like unchanged permanent. Doesn't feel right.
Permanent.
Sure. Yeah. Like
she said it's good enough. Whatever.
Nothing is permanent. I mean, yeah, nothing's permanent, not even death. So it's just like, well, I guess that depends on your like particular like life views. But the energy of your life doesn't ever go away. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. If that doesn't have a permanent, I found it hard. Like anything could have a permanent if the essence of energy itself can never have a permanent state, and life is energy. So it's like, well, if energy can't be permanent, then nothing in life is permanent ever, because it's impossible. It's made out of something that can never be permanent.
Well, because energy is not still.
Yeah,
it's always flowing, even if it's slow.
It's the flow, the ebb, like the process.
Okay, so let's talk about duality in spirituality. Living in, I guess we can chalk it up to spiritual ego, in a sense of living in not even just spiritual ego, but just trying to live in like pure spiritual stuff.
People hate to hear it, and spiritual people, you're gonna hate to hear it, especially if you have something with early life trauma with religion. Being stuck in your spiritual ego is being a religious person. The whole thing you don't like is pushing your views on everyone. Your views are right. Everything has to be by the book all the time, perfect. It's like, well, that's the thing you hated.
Because it worked for you, you think it's got to work for everybody else. Well, the Catholics and Christians and every other religion believes the same thing.
It's like, yes,
You hit me with that about 6 months ago. You were like, Dom, you're being like, basically like your mom and everybody else that shoved religion down your throat, but you're doing that with spirituality. And I was like,
yes, because I did the same thing. And it's because you don't realize it, because when you're looking at it as this thing helped me, I see people struggling and I want to help them the same way I was helped. That's the loop you get in, but you have to go take out I. What helped you? No singular person. You did that. So why do you think that you can help anyone else when you were the only one that could help you? So it's like only them can get them there, because it was the same thing as you. Like you can
it's a part of your journey, but it doesn't mean it's meant to be a part of someone else's journey.
I mean, there's been times where people told me stuff that I believe now years ago. It just didn't ring, didn't register, didn't resonate. I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, someone told me the truth and I didn't hear it. And it's like, well,
that's been happening to me a lot recently, especially the other week. I said something to Britt. I don't remember what it was. And she goes, I've only been telling you that for years, but I'm glad you realized it now. And I was like, I know, but I couldn't hear it from you.
Yeah, it's like this weird.
Anyway, still getting used to these new mics.
It was this weird, you hate to use the old analogy. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. But that's what's happening. You can spit whatever information at anyone. The information is there. If someone's looking for the information, they will find it. It's like,
and they're gonna find it when they're meant to find it.
Yes.
Not when you want them to find it.
How I'm someone who will say that one of the biggest practice I've done that completely changed my life is meditation. Do you know how many years people told me just meditate? And I said, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. That's not going to be it for me. Because it wasn't at that time.
Right.
I wasn't at the place where that would have worked. So it's like.
And all the people that, told you about it, they told you that and tried to get you to do it because they cared about you and they didn't like you suffering.
Yeah, so it's like, it's such a funny thing. I look back on all the times where I was, really negative and people are like, oh, you just need to be more positive. And I was like, fuck you. That's bullshit.
Literally. And that's when we were living in the opposite side of the pendulum, living in just the physical, medicating with substances or it's just distractions.
Duality in the mind and like the physical and the mental, I guess I would say, is in itself a tricky ball game too,
Every little thing that we hit on the table makes a loud noise and we're like, we normally don't hear it.
I'm gonna hear it like to them. We just like don't happen. But yeah, like a lot of people growing up, I had the problem of I lived in the mental and not the physical at like all. And then I had a period where I lived in the mental and not physical at all. And then I had the opposite. I was physical and not mental. And then I learned you have to find this weird balance. But the reason why I couldn't find the balance when I was trying was because I was trying to find the balance by being perfect. In order to have balance, you're gonna have to allow, sometimes you're gonna have negative habits and traits. And if you for instance, I'm a big foodie. Love food. That's like a punishment. That's like a reward. But if I tell myself I am only allowed to eat these things that, are like by the book, will be the healthiest thing for me, make me feel
your spiritual side, right?
Yeah, it's like my ego will be consumed with craving the thing that I'm denying myself, instead of just being like, okay, well, let's have something. If you really want it, let's have it. But then if we do that, then for X amount of days, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, like you can have it like once a week, instead of a cheat day, you can have a cheat meal twice a week.
Exactly. Because if you do stuff like that, it's like when the same thing as like a toddler. If you tell your toddler you can't have something, what the fuck does the toddler do? Well, you're a toddler. Hate to admit it to you, but you're also a toddler. So you have a part of you that's a toddler, and if you restrict it from anything, it's going to say, fuck you, I want to do that exact thing. Why can't I do it?
It takes training and learning and understanding when the ego becomes the servant and not the master.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of patience.
So you're literally growing this toddler of an ego into an adult and essentially your teammate that works with you.
Right.
It's like, okay, we understand the ebb and flow.
Like, we
Back and
understand
forth.
sometimes you're gonna rock it a little harder than I am, and sometimes I'm gonna be rocking it a little harder. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes the ego is a little more out than it should be, and sometimes the spiritual side is out way more than the ego side. It's like,
Yeah.
like, you just gotta let yourself. To have duality doesn't mean everything is perfectly even all the time. Duality means sometimes things are bad and sometimes things are good. And I think that definition gets mixed up, where people think that duality means a balance.
A
Like,
perfect balance right in the
yes.
middle of the
And
scale.
it's like,
No.
you might have that sometimes, but it's about balancing out the energy. And sometimes the energy is going to be lower, but sometimes it's going to fluctuate and be higher.
It's like a seesaw, kind of. You know,
Mhm.
you're going up really high and then low, really low. But at some time you find this perfect balance
Mhm.
between the two where y'all are both jumping off the ground at the perfect time and the
Having a
perfect
great time.
force, and it's going up and down in this threshold in the middle,
Mhm.
basically. But it's
Yeah.
still over and under. It's just not as extreme.
I was I watched this one TikTok, and I think this guy was on a podcast. I think it was like a special guest on the podcast. This podcast. I do not remember what it was. Oops. But he said that, like, I think some like medical person was like talking to him, or therapist was talking to him about like a medical like now like analogy. And it was like, if you were like, it was his therapist, because he said that he doesn't like his extreme highs and extreme lows, and he wishes he could just be at a middle ground. And the therapist looked at him and said, if that was up to you, then your heart monitor would be dead. And I was like, ah, because he's right. Like, it has to go up and
You'd be
down.
bored
Yeah,
too
he's like,
if you
he's like, on a heart monitor, he's like, if it's up to you, you're saying on the heart monitor you should just be flatlined,
no
because it's, yeah,
stimulation.
it's like, because the flat line to you is better than the high and low because of the balance. He's like, you got to find your own balance. Everyone's highs and lows can be different. Some people have more extreme highs and lows than others, but at the end of the day, it's about sitting with your highs and lows and appreciating them for what they are and what they can be and what they signify in your personal like journey. Because, like, even in the lows, like, sometimes the lows feel low at first, and then once you actually sit and figure out what the fuck you're feeling low about, you're like, you know what? I actually think that I felt so extreme because I didn't understand it. And when an emotion doesn't feel seen, it's gonna scream at you because it's like, see me, please, see me, see me.
It's gonna keep coming up.
It's gonna keep being like, why are you ignoring me? And now you're neglecting that sensitive side of you that you hated when people did when you were a child. And it's like, you're abusing you're neglecting yourself in the same way that you hated that people did when you were young. And so it's like this sitting moment of being like, I see you. I don't necessarily, like that we're feeling this way, but this is how we're feeling, and that's cool. And we're gonna go with it instead of being like, I don't like that feeling.
Yeah, you have to
That was me.
validate it to an extent. Yeah,
I used to just ignore any feeling I didn't want, and I thought that was gonna be efficient. Alright.
same, same. I did some mirror talk the other day, and I was like, "Stop this! You don't have to be feeling." I was like, woke up and I was like, "Damn, okay, that was not the right way to go about it." That was literally my mom sitting there telling me, "Oh, you shouldn't be upset about this."
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I
like,
am upset about it.
whenever I'm upset, I started like, when I'm talking to myself, I literally talk to myself like a toddler, straight up. Like, I'll be crying, and all of a sudden I'm realizing, okay, I'm really upset. I need to figure out what the fuck's going on. And I'll literally calm my voice, be like, okay, like, out loud, talk to myself, like, what is going on? And I'm crying, giving a reaction, saying, no, no, no. Let's break this down. Why is this bothering you in this way? What does that make you feel? And that calm, like, before I know it, I've unpacked what is going on, and I'm able to speak about it without hyperventilating because I've figured out what the fuck is going on.
Right.
It's like, sometimes you just need like that. You need a safe space to be able to process an emotion. So if you're not providing yourself a safe space inside, it's going to be really hard to process an
Yep.
emotion.
Let's see. That was, I mean, I was struggling to process what I was processing earlier before you got here. And then you got here and you held this safe space for me. And you were like, no, you need to validate what you're feeling, but you're directing the feeling at the wrong thing.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's anytime I find that if something, in my own personal experience, when something has happened that isn't, and I'm not saying the most traumatic things, but like lower level stuff and more kind of heavy, but not like, life or death shit. When those kind of things happen and they are still hurting you pretty significantly years later or periods of times later, it's because you're neglecting something. Because
Mhm.
yes, some things will linger and will hurt you for a long time, but if it's still causing like a big reaction inside of you, it's like
Like the
there's
big trigger.
it's like there's something inside of you that is still unseen. So when it gets triggered, it's screaming at you because it's like every time you do this, I scream at you and I tell you to look at me and you ignore me. And then we're here years later and I'm still doing it. And so it's like you start to go, oh, so you start analyzing. Like there will be things where they hurt me and I'm like, it's been 2 years. Why is this still bothering me? And I sit and I'm like, oh, it's that thing isn't bothering me. It's this part that I never
And
acknowledged was bothering me.
never addressed that
Yes.
particular. So it's like the whole, yeah.
It just kind of tries to hold on for dear life. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I will stay.
Yep. Or if you direct it at the wrong part of the situation, and then you think you're like, why am I still angry about this? And then,
Yes.
oh God.
When you realize
If
like what you've been hurt or upset at, it's like not what you thought. You're like so confusing.
Yep. And all I have to say about that, guys, Sage told me to do this earlier, and it was like monumentally healing for me. Talk about the problem on video, record yourself. Like journaling is amazing, and I can figure out a lot with journaling, but like making a video of myself and being able to see what part of me talking made like my voice choke up and my lip quiver and the tears start rolling down. I was like, oh, I'm most upset about that and not what I thought I was most upset about. And that was
Yeah.
crazy.
I spent most of my life as a writer, so it's easy for things to get past me. That's why I started realizing journaling can be very helpful, but I've learned that the video thing works better for me because I've been writing my whole life in a lot of crazy scenarios because I was a creative writer for fantasy. So like I was writing all kind of crazy shit,
Mhm.
I know. So it's like I've been writing these things for so long that when I write them out, it's almost desensitized and it can come from a place of just kind of spitting out the information and I can't see my emotion.
Mhm.
It's like I'm used to writing out things in a non-emotional way, conveying emotion, but not truly emotional.
Yeah.
You're writing down, I feel this way, but you're
Mm.
writing it down so gently and eloquently to read. It's like you're not writing your emotions, you're writing about your emotions. And that's where journaling gets really like, you have to realize when you're writing about your emotion versus when you're genuinely emotionally writing.
Yeah, I found journaling like it's really good for the processing
Mm-hmm.
of it and the breakdown of it. But if you are just journaling and you're like, I feel this and I feel this, but you can't reach any conclusion, maybe you're not trying to process the right thing.
Yeah. And
So,
that's what I'm saying. Like, whenever you talk, when you're in an emotional state and you're talking about things that make you emotional, first off, what's fascinating is because you see yourself how other people see you when you're emotional.
oh yeah,
And
that
that
was
video,
crazy.
you're like, oh, I'm like, oh my God, that's what people see whenever I'm talking to them about this. And so then it gives me realization where I'm like, this is why they know before I know what's going on because they see it and I'm being
Yes.
blind to it. So I'm like, well, how come everyone knew this was what? And they're like, because we saw you.
Yeah, you called me out so blindly, so plainly. You were just like, I think you should try going to make a video because when you're talking about this, you're not actually getting upset about this part. You're getting upset about this part. And I was like, huh?
Yeah,
I have
like
to go. Everything in my body was like, go
because
do that right now. And I was like, okay,
because
whatever.
it confuses you. Because when you see it, you're like,
I
like
was
I
very taken aback. I was like,
because when you're feeling emotional and then you reflect on your emotional moment later, your memories can be, especially around emotions, blur in weird ways, and so it's hard for you to pinpoint what exact statements in your monologue did it. But when you're watching it, you're like, oh, noted, noted, noted.
mm-hmm,
It's like, and every time something comes up and you break it down like that, you find other things. You're like, oh, there's this,
right.
this. It's
I wonder what the duality is in that balance in that.
For me personally, it was strictly the duality I see in me doing the videos and watching them back was because I was someone who very kind of heavily relied on talking to other people about how I felt and them trying to basically going, this is how you're feeling, I can see. And after that, so I was just kind of like, I want to do this so I can be like that for me. Like there are certain
Do it
people,
myself.
yeah, it's like, like Sam, like I go to talk to Sam, he's gonna know what's bothering me
Mm-hmm.
just by listening to me talk. And I was like, I want to know myself that way. Why don't I? I know my mind, but I don't know my voice in the physical, only in the mental. And
Right.
that
I
was
don't
the
know my
problem.
facial reactions. I don't know
It's like getting
like I can
crap.
feel my voice crack, but I can't hear it. I can't.
And the facial reactions,
Mm,
you don't even realize the micro expressions
micro
fascinate me.
expressions are crazy.
They are mind blowing. You'll be sitting there and you think, I'm not even showing a reaction. All of a sudden you're like, and everyone else sees that little trick of a smile and they're like, so it's like you tell a lot with your face without realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so especially when you're emotional, it really does help you see yourself in a different way. Like that
It's
more
like
vulnerable.
you record it in your ego and the hurt part of you, and then you watch it back because you word vomited all of that, so you got a lot of the emotion back, and then you watch it back as your higher self, basically.
I
With
imagine it as my higher self holding my inner child, watching it back and going, I see you. I see what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
Like, you see, we're watching this together. We're in this together. I'm seeing what you're saying. Do you see, what I'm saying when I say this? And it's like a review.
Right. And venting to other people, like it can be great, but sometimes they just they won't give you the response that you want or need. So
Well,
being able to do that for yourself is
yeah,
really powerful.
it's very because you gotta keep in mind anytime you vent to anyone, obviously like therapists are trained to try to get away from their own personal stuff and listen to you. But I'm gonna be real, even from my own, like just from guessing, I'm sure sometimes it's hard for therapists too. When you are going through your own things, it's hard to listen to someone else speak and not hear it from your lens of what's going on in your life.
Mm.
You immediately want to relate to what someone's saying. So your brain starts saying, what am I going through that's kind of similar to that? And so
Mm-hmm.
then you're accidentally projecting a little bit of what's going on in you sometimes because you see something that you recognize and you're confident, and then you're like, well, they may be similar, but they're not the exact same. But now you have these commentary coming to you that isn't exactly for your specific situation. It kind of is, but kind of not. And so it's like venting with, people can be really helpful. But I also think it's like
It'd be damaging at the same time.
you have to really like think about like who it is. I like who you vent to is really important. I feel
Or
like a lot of people just love to trauma dump with everyone,
yeah.
and that was like really popular for like the past couple years. We're getting out of that, babe, because
Mm-hmm.
trauma dumping, not everyone deserves to know your trauma.
Definitely not. And also, like, be careful who you let give you advice. Be like, hey,
Yeah,
I need to vent, but I purely just want to vent and I want you to just listen
that's
or like
important too.
comfort me
Yeah,
afterwards. Don't give me advice. I don't want advice. I just need someone
a
to
listener.
help me transmute this
Mhm.
energy, basically.
No, and I'm trying to be better at being a listener. So I'll be straight with that one. I am the kind of person that my brain says, you tell me a problem. My brain says, how do I fix this?
Same.
And so there's this song that someone's making on TikTok. I'll show you after. It's really good. But it was this guy. I think he's writing it for like his like ex girlfriend or current girlfriend, maybe. I don't know. But he's basically saying like, I'm sorry because now I see that you just wanted me to listen. You didn't want a problem solver.
I think I saw
It's
that.
so good. He
Mm.
said,
Oh my God.
no problem. Over. I heard it. Literally watched
I
it.
think Sam showed it to
I
me
was
because
like,
I
I
think you probably
watched
sent
it.
it to Sam.
As soon as I saw it, I sent to him. I said, this just made me see it from another way.
Yes, he did. And I was like, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, it was like it made me really see it from her way. I'm like, because in my mind, I just thought you're telling me these things, so I don't want you to feel bad. So I'm trying to help you. And the way the guy worded it was so simple, but so much where I was able to say, that's how it's being perceived. Like I'm
Yeah.
just trying to fix all of his shit, and like and he
Uh-huh.
just needed someone to listen.
I
And I
was
was like,
always trying to fix Brittany's
yeah, it's like
problems when
because
she like she would
it's like, oh, they just wanted to vent. They just wanted someone to go, I hear you. And I'm
well,
trying to be better at that because it's so hard for me to just be like, I hear you.
and here's the thing. What that is reciprocity. And I'm actually reading about that in my book right now. The body keeps the score, the mind, body
About that
healing
book.
of trauma. Epic.
I've heard it was highly recommended.
Will
It's on my
change your
list.
life. Like I'm literally going through and highlighting
No, that's
parts
what
of
I've
it
been doing in my
and
book
I'll
too.
go back and I'll read the few pages, the parts that I highlighted before I go and read a few more,
Mhm,
because it's so educational that I
mhm.
actually can only read like 10, 15 pages at a time. And then my mind is like, okay, let's
Process.
process that. Let's relate it to our own lives. But reciprocity is essential to one's healing from trauma because it is simply being heard
Mhm,
by your peers.
mhm,
We need that social acceptance of being heard and understood by someone, and if we can't get that, we will continue to live in this traumatized loop,
mhm.
basically, because that's one of the first steps of healing trauma.
I can see that because I feel like humans on a base, they're communal
Mhm.
species. And there was a time where, a while back where everyone just kind of we were a community, so we were all family and they treated each other with value. Family is just blood now. Family is blood or choice. Whereas like there was a time where family was your community and it meant like you value them very important. And I think that when we kind of became more industrialized, more separated, we lost that sense of community because I watched this TikTok where people talking about what changed their life was getting into a community. And they're like,
Mhm.
and like your spiritual religious stuff, not a community. Your work, not a community. A community is something you're doing just to be a part of the community, not
So,
for anything personal. So like some people have like knitting
jujitsu for
clubs,
me.
jujitsu. Yeah, it's like because you just want a sense of community, but it
Mhm.
doesn't have to do with your mental psyche or your work.
Right. Well,
It's something
because
that
almost none of us there do the same thing for work.
yeah, it's like it gives you
Everybody's going
a
through different mental psyche issues,
yeah, it's like I
and
saw that and I was like, oh yeah, that's what people are missing. That's why like I feel like you said like that first person like really changes things because once you get that connection with
mhm,
one person, you recognize you can have it with multiple people.
exactly.
And
And
before you know it, you have your own community of people that you feel safe with in
right.
some
And
capacity.
oftentimes you can find that community almost anywhere that you go, because when I was traveling and I went to
Right. Yeah.
Nashville,
It's crazy.
I just called a random gym that I found on the map and I was like, "Hey, can I get drop in for, for an open mat class or something like that?" And they're like, "Yeah, come on by, whatever." I paid the fee, and I mean, I made a bunch of friends,
Hmm.
and I actually made a pretty decent connection with this girl, who the next day we ended up going on
On
a
like a hike,
hike,
right? Yeah,
and
yeah.
like,
I remember seeing on
mhm,
Snapchat.
yeah, and like it was super cool because I had some mushroom chocolate, so we even
Oh,
like split a piece of it. She
that's
brought her
fair.
dog, and we were like standing in the freezing cold water barefoot, just like vibing and not kind of trauma dumping, but evenly
Yeah,
to
well,
each
I would
other.
say,
Just connecting on a very
yeah,
deep level.
it's like there's nothing necessarily wrong with talking to people about your traumas. Like I know I said like don't, and not, which I do agree. Not everyone deserves or should have like people don't realize when you tell someone like unless you know psychology, all the psychology girlies, boys, and dames right now are going got you because when you know someone's trauma, you know how to run them.
You
You
know how
know
to
how to
use it against
manipulate
them.
them, you
Hmm.
know how to get your way, and there are some people out there that don't deserve that knowledge because they will use it against
Yeah,
you.
there are malicious people out there,
And
and
you don't want to believe it when you meet someone that seems really nice. You don't want to believe that they would do that until a
until
few
they do.
months, a year, passes and they do something that you're like, "You just brought up my trauma to use it against me." Huh.
Not my mom doing that to me sometimes.
Yeah, it's like that's not how you do
Love
things,
you, mom.
and so I feel like it's one of those things where yes, I get wanting people to know your past, but I do think that as a species right now, we're slowly transitioning, but we're still in a state of being obsessed with our past.
Yeah.
And we're slowly, as a community, going more towards let's be present.
Hmm.
Like I was thinking earlier today, there are some people that know my past, and there are some people that will know my future plans, but I want to meet people in the present because if I meet someone and I go, this is who I was for the first 20 years of my life, they know someone I'm not who's not me.
Hmm.
Why did I just tell them the entire life story of a stranger?
Right. And then it's like that one line in the song, You Might Not Like Her by Maddie Zom, where it's like, I don't know if I'm right, but one day you'll learn to keep your own secrets.
Oh yeah.
And for a while, I just didn't really understand what that meant. And I'm like, oh, okay. I they're not necessarily secrets that need to be hidden from everybody, but like only certain people are deserving to hear them.
Well, I feel like we as a society, we love to twist words, like secret. It's now viewed as a negative word, but it's not. Like, when you're like even like that, my first instinct was keep a secret for yourself. Why are you keeping secrets? But it's just a secret just means you don't tell everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But we have this negative, like we've created this negative veil over certain words,
And
and we're
like
like predisposed to be like, that's shady.
that's where, well, because I think, and that's where the duality and balance comes into play into this conversation, because I feel like in the past, a lot of people were so closed off and not vulnerable. And now
They hid
everybody's like,
everything.
oh, let's be an open book. Let's be vulnerable, because hiding things and keeping it to ourselves is damaging and detrimental. It creates these wrecking balls in your head. But we swung to the other side of the pendulum only to be able to figure out, okay, here's the whole spectrum. What's a happy medium?
You can only find a happy medium if you've experienced the two extremes, or you don't know where the medium is.
Yes.
Like,
and it sucks that that's the case, but that is the damn case.
You don't know how good or bad it can be unless you've been as good or bad as it can be, and go, this is where the middle ground is.
Right.
Until then, you don't actually know where you're striving to be in the middle. Like, you don't know where the duality is in it because you don't know what you're trying to balance.
Right. Sometimes I'm just like, oh yes, I want this to be so terrible because one day it'll be so good. Like, oh,
I get that.
That's when I'm like, I'm thankful for this flow moment because I know how much joy is gonna come from it. And I'm like,
yeah, like I'm
this sucks though.
For feeling this so I can get out of my body.
Literally. Oh, life is crazy.
It really is.
So yeah, finding that balance in all things, you just kind of have to understand the eternal dance, the pendulum, whatever you want to call it, whatever analogy you want to slap onto it. You're gonna experience one end of the spectrum and realize that you don't like it and you don't want to be there. It's not working for you, and then you're going to jump to the other side of the spectrum.
Realize it's not sustainable because you don't have the buildup even to try to make it
sustainable. And that was me with like I was living completely traumatized and wasn't self-aware, wasn't working on healing, and then I jumped to the other side of the spectrum where I was almost too self-aware. I was focused only on healing. I was looking for the next problem that could come up in my life.
Everything shuts down of just healing right now.
Yeah. I was like, spiritual ego didn't want to focus on like my career. And
well, I feel like it's important too, when even a spiritual ego is still an ego. So you have to recognize that the reason why most people, when they first fall into a spirituality, why they get so obsessed is because that spiritual ego has felt neglected for so long. And it's like, well, you spent all these years doing all this other shit. Now that I'm here, you don't want to spend enough time with me. And so it tries to demand all of your time. And you're like, we have time. I know I messed up in the past, but we have time and we have to go slow or we're just going to crash and burn. Right.
Oh, and that's cycle. Exactly. And it's the same when like you have, okay, let's use people in the Amish community as an example for this. Rumspringa. Oh. When you were like,
where are you going with this?
So, they live this disconnected lifestyle out mostly in nature and abiding by these certain rules, and then they're allowed to go out into our society and they just wild out, and they're like, oh my god, I never want to go back to that. But then some of them will get hooked on drugs and alcohol. And like,
I've watched so many videos where they're like, a lot of them try drugs while they're out here, and I'm like, you know what, I get it. I get it, because what did I do when I became of age and I thought I was mature enough to experience life?
You had a drug phase.
I tried drugs because I thought, well, if I can never do it again, I can do it right now. And to them, they got a short period. So I'm like, y'all, I don't even blame y'all. Like, I'd be wilding out too. Like,
do you know how long that period is? I have no idea.
I don't know. My brain wants to say it's like a week.
But that's it?
I don't think it's that long.
She said, I gotta look it up now. But yeah, so like there's the duality in that is if you spend so many years living on that side of the spectrum and you have the opportunity and basically you're aware of it, you're like, oh, things can be different. Well, what can they be like?
It's so much longer than I thought. This
I
is why
thought it
people
was a
get
long
fucked
time.
up.
Yeah, I thought.
2 years on
Whoa,
average. That's a
what?
long time.
Oh,
It
that's a
says
really. I thought it was like 2
it says
months.
each community has its own rules regarding Rumspringa, but it usually lasts for around 2 years.
That's crazy.
So you know what? It is. But
Rumspringa.
I
I was
actually kind of
pronouncing
have
it
more
wrong
respect
too.
for like the Amish traditions because they really do give them a decent amount of time to go.
No,
Do
they
you want to come
understand.
back or not?
Yeah, they
Which is
understand. They're like,
crazy.
okay, because I
Which is
mean, think about it.
natural.
You do need more than like 2 months
Yeah. 2 years
to figure
that's
out
enough
if you want to go
figure.
back.
Like
2 years is yeah.
because like imagine like I just that's crazy. Well, Amish isn't a religion, I guess. So I'm like I was comparing it to like Christianity. I'm
Well,
like imagine
kind of.
Christians were just like I'll be an atheist
Aren't
for a
they
while.
Christian though? But they have their
Oh.
own set of beliefs. You're gonna go into a Googling spiral now.
I just gotta know though. Oh, they
Yeah.
are a Christian group.
Yeah, I figured they were, but I think they also
walk away with no religious ties for 2 years. That's progressive for Christians. They're so like for them to be Amish, like they don't even have TVs, and I'm like, they're progressive.
I love you.
They're like, wow, let them run out for 2 years and then decide what they want to do. Like that is like that's fair. That's
Yeah. And I mean that's what you did with alcohol. You didn't drink until you were 21 and then you had a phase of where you just got drunk every weekend for like a year. Or no, every night.
Yeah, I had like at least a solid like 6 or so months where it was every night. I would just come home and immediately take shots. He just like walked into the home, pour some shots, taking the Jason Derulo. I don't know. I had this phase
Crickets.
where I would turn on like a Jason Derulo song, and I would have until he said Jason Derulo to take him. I'll never forget because my record was well sometimes I play before like songs that were Jason Derulo that didn't say Jason Derulo in them. But I turned on Wiggle. Isn't that the song? Wiggle. Turn that shit on 17 seconds, 7 shots. That was my record. Yeah. Not a great one to write about, but it was. Yeah.
I'm just imagining how drunk you got and
Bro, and
how quickly it hit
like,
you.
And the thing is, like, I didn't enjoy the act of drinking at that point. Like now I'm more like if I drink, I'd like to have a slow sip thing to like kind of go. But I never did. I just wanted to be drunk. So I would literally take those shots, be and chilling, eat, smoke, and then go to sleep.
That's crazy. See, and now you found your balance and you drink like what? Like how often a month do you think you drink?
Honestly, it's gotta be maybe a few days. I haven't like I went
like 2 to 4.
Yeah,
because I probably drink two, maybe 3 times a month because
back in like
typically don't drink during the week. It's only on the weekend.
September, October of last year, I was probably drinking like maybe like once a week.
See, that for me is often.
It was often. Because it was like I was going, and it was because it was an environment thing. I was at a bar with people, so I ended up having a few beers. Like we were there for so many hours, and then towards like at the end of like December, right before my birthday, I was going less, but I was still going a decent like going to Benny's. And I didn't always drink, but most times I'd have at least a beer. And so after going enough, like on my birthday, you know, I had my day. I ended up going to Benny's that night. But after that, I think I went to Benny's maybe once, if that. No, I didn't. That was the last time I've been to Benny's was the night of my birthday. I haven't been back since then. So I was just like,
yeah, there was a period there for a while where I was going to Tuesdays every night, and then every weekend.
You enjoy for a moment. It's new. You're like, oh, you know, social, talk to people. And eventually, either gets tired, or you just someone weird you out there.
Well, I was just like trying to like go out by myself. It was a like because you know Brittany was in New Orleans, and now I'm like by myself over here, and I was like, oh. I guess I'm gonna go out instead of sitting at home on a Tuesday night, and then so there was a period of time for like 2 months where I was drinking like 6 to 8 times a month, and I was like, all right, I gotta check myself because that's a little. See, I swung back to the other side of the spectrum there for a little bit. I was like, let me test the water. No,
yeah, that was me with Benny. I was like, oh, it's a little more often than I would like, and I kind of like sat down like after my birthday. I was like, looking in January, I was like, all right, I'm 27, like. sounds cheesy, but I was trying to imagine, when I was a kid, who I thought I would be at 27.
No, that's a good thing to check yourself with.
And I was like, I'm drinking too much. Because when I was young, I didn't necessarily think that I would drink, but I said, once I'm older, I might drink, a few, maybe a few times a month, if I ever drink. And so when I sat there and I said, girl, you might not be drinking every day, and I'm proud of that difference, but you're still drinking too much.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy when you let your inner child call you out.
Yeah.
Because that like 6-year-olds have no fucking filter. They're
No.
like, you drink too much alcohol, and you're like,
Yeah, like,
okay,
I'm just relaxing.
yeah.
And they're like, and that's what you smoke weed for.
See,
Called me out. And I was like, I was just being in a social setting. That's what you smoke weed for. If you use weed as the answer for all those things, you can't use another drug too. But I was trying to do that. I was like, no.
That was me. I had done a 2-hour breathwork session, and then afterwards it was like, what is your inner child telling you that they need more of? And I literally, without even thinking, just wrote like, I want to play outside more and take my dog for a walk. And so I started walking Caspius now a couple times a week, and I enjoy the hell out of just taking him on a damn walk, being with my dog. Because I mean, animals were a huge part of my life when I was younger, especially as a child. They were my only friends.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to have.
That is a tragedy.
I never like
Benji. Y'all weren't allowed to go play outside that much either. So
Benji was the first animal that I was like, I understand what people are talking about now, because I never did. I was like, I mean, they're cute. I saw pets more as an accessory. I hate to be honest, but that's true. I never had an animal growing up, so
didn't understand the connection.
No, so I was just like, why are people acting like this about their animal, like their pets? Like, I get that you love them, but like y'all being a little bit much. But then once I got animals, and I was like, got it. Like, it's not just that, but it's like
the companionship.
Yeah, it's like you don't see it, you don't feel it, so you're like, that doesn't make any sense.
I would lose my box if I was living in this house without a dog and a cat. If I was completely by myself. Because there's some times where I'm like freaking out and like I'll just sit in the kitchen and get on the ground and cry. But Caspius, he's such a good little therapy dog. He comes up and literally climbs in my lap and like licking my face until I'm like I'm either like stop or I'm just like laughing because I'm like, what are you doing, dog? Like the way that they feel emotion is
I know that
creepy.
Benji, like if I'm sitting on the bed crying, I'll be crying a few minutes. Before you know it, she slowly starts singing her way out. And then she'll always like try to sit on my lap. And I'm like,
and start purring.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm I'm too overstimulated. She'll come and like lay right next to my leg, so she's still touching me, but she's not on my lap to try to like be like, I'm still here.
We love it. And I heard somewhere that like the frequency of a cat's purr is actually like really healing for them.
Well, like, they do it like it helps heal kittens, and they think we're a kitten. They think we're just a big naked cat, like kitten. So they meow at us, which is the language they made up to talk to us.
Oh, I meow back at her, and we have wars.
I love talking about her. I'm like, meow. And I'm just like, sometimes I stare at her though, and I'm just like, Sarah, I'm like, are we talking right now? I'm like, because I know that you talk like this to your cat. Just so crazy. If cats can talk like that, why can't we? They literally don't be saying shit, and they know.
I communicate with her sometimes like that, and like
I really think I do. I'm like, I feel like I focused hard enough, and we hit the same frequency, and you heard my thought.
There was this one time where like, because it was one of the spirit science videos that I had watched years ago, and it was like you can like communicate psychically through the third eye. It's like if you picture an image, you can't do this because you don't have the mind's eye. But like if you have the mind's eye, you like you form it right here in your third eye. I know this sounds crazy, but like y'all, I tried it a couple of times just for the heck of it. And like I saw the image of her walking over to me across the living room. And then I looked at her and I like pushed the image out of my third eye into hers. And she looked at me and just started walking over. And I was like, whoa, this is creepy.
There's a lot of like ideology that like early humanoids, like before we had an actual language, that the way that they had community before they had language.
Yeah.
So the theory is that like, yeah, they could have just been pointing at shit, but they had to have understood each other in some capacity. So there is like ideology that early like humans were connected enough to be able to kind of get an idea like
Telepathic
yeah, like almost like
communication.
like mind reading sounds crazy, but it's something along those, where it's like you just kind of know,
Yeah.
you're around someone and you just look at them and y'all just know.
Mm-hmm.
No one's
Well,
saying
and
anything, but you know.
there's also like magicians and stuff that do like Trey does like mind reading type of tricks,
Dude,
and
it's so wild.
it blows my
Online,
mind
man.
sometimes, and I'm like, okay, like is
Like,
it a mixture of psychology or is it truly a like you being connected kind of
Well,
thing?
I was this thing where someone the other day was like, if you look at science stuff and we didn't have the explanation, it looks like magic. And so I was like, why is it that they are not? Why do you think that science and magic aren't the same thing? The only difference is that science means we've guessed what caused it.
The cause and
But
effect.
it doesn't, like, why do we think that magic is only real if we don't know how it happened? It's still magic. Like, I don't care if you know how it happened. It's still magic that it happened. I don't get it. Like, science and magic are the same thing, and I would die on that hill. Like, they're the same exact thing. Like, it blows my mind. Like, you're gonna tell me it's not crazy. The things that it's not magic, the shit they're buying is just because some white dude explained it in a way that you don't even understand. Some scientists explain something, you reiterate it back, but you don't truly understand what you're saying because it's like beyond your knowledge. But you're like, well, science said it's not magic because the sun does da 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 da.
It's still pretty magical.
We are a floating rock in space, and the sun and the moon are the only reason we're alive. I don't care what science says. That's magic. Like, are you kidding me?
Are you pressed? And on that note,
Duality. Sorry.
Duality. I think that wraps up our duality balance. Just remember to just kind of be aware if you find yourself in one extreme and you've already lived the opposite of that extreme, maybe, do a little self check-in and figure out, hey, where do I want to be in the middle of these two extremes? What is a comfortable, healthy balance for myself? So.
Yep. I realized after you went inside, I was like, I think I'm supposed to say something here, but I was so zoned out watching our little mic things.
This new equipment has been slightly distracting, but I definitely love it.
So fun.
Excited to see how we sound.
Yeah.
Excited to bring guests on and everything. But yeah, anyways, guys, thanks for joining us on the Ethereal Podcast. I'm Dom.
Saige.
And we hope you guys have a great week, and we'll catch you on the next one.